Okay, look, someone just jumped on my lap. Someone decided to join me on this initial video. Well, I did the initial video. This video is about who? Who am I? Who am I who is this person that says he's rediscovering Christianity and is here with his cat Neptune, a cat named after a pagan god, the god of the sea, Poseidon. His name is Neptune. This one. Okay, all right. Thanks for the quick appearance, the quick cameo, Neptune. Now it's all me. All right, who am I to go on this journey? Well, first, let me tell you who I am. My name is Tony Petroza. I'm an entrepreneur, personal development professional. I was a life coach. Now I'm the head of a technological coaching tech startup. Okay. Um, my background, I was raised Catholic. I come from an Italian Irish background. I was raised Catholic, went to a private Catholic school as a child in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, in the parish of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is a Mexican shrine. Um, Although in Bensonhurst at that time in the 60s and 70s, I was born in 1965. Yeah, I'm pretty old. Almost all Italians in this neighborhood. I'm back in this neighborhood now. I've lived all over. I'm back here. And I went to the private school, first through eighth grade in uniform. And it was a wonderful education. Then I went to a Catholic high school, Severian, a very prestigious high school before my mother remarried, and we moved from Brooklyn to Staten Island, went over that Guinea gangplank, as it sometimes called. And then I went to public high school, and that was a whole other thing. But okay, now you got the initial background. I grew up to be, even though I'm from Brooklyn, grew up to be a hunter and an outdoorsman by my father. I was a Cub Scout, a Weblo, a Boy Scout in Troop 596 from the parish of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I was an altar boy. I was an altar boy. And I love being an altar boy, especially, being part of the mass, especially the funerals. The Italians would give me tips. I used to get $5 tips for being part of the funeral procession in the mass in the church. This is back in the 70s. I first began to be an altar boy maybe like 1974 or five, perhaps. Did it for a couple of years before they threw me off. Why did they throw me off the altar boys? I was caught. I used to sometimes drink the sacrificial wine in the sacristy. And why? Well, I was a future alcoholic, and I got caught drinking the sacrificial wine, and they threw me off the altar boys. Um, and I was also a not a security guard, a school crossing guard, primarily for Bay Ridge Parkway, 75th Street and 15th Avenue. And I don't think I got thrown off of that. And I went from sergeant to lieutenant to captain, if I'm not mistaken, had that cool little shield. So that was my young childhood. And when my mother moved us over to Staten Island and remarried, I renounced athletic. I was very into athletics, and I was quite an athlete. Oh, I was a good athlete. Let me just say that. But then I really I had this chip on my shoulder, to say the least, about my father's departure. And I'll never forget when he left home in Catholic school. I remember the day, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I'm not sure of the year. It was either 1975 or 1976. Wednesday. It was a Wednesday. And the Catholic schools, we have half a day, right? And we get out early. And then, like public school, people go to, children go to get a special religious instruction from public schools. They come into the school and get it there in that Wednesday afternoon. But we're gone. We're off for the day. And we came home. I had an older brother and a younger sister in our uniform. We came home, and it was very odd. We came into the house together, and these little kids, and half my family has convened, like 15 of them in there. And and once we came to the door, they were all through the door, they were all staring at us. You could hear a pin drop. And my father said he had to speak to us alone in the living room. And that's when my father said he was leaving home. And my brother was over here, my sister over here, both crying, bawling their eyes out. I was stern faced, but inside it was a total collapse, And that I had to it took me years and years to reconcile with that. And that was a great sadness, and it became a great rage. And that was a definitive thing in my life. I got a cat going on over there, another cat. Oh no, that's Neptune again. Um, but when I moved to Staten Island, I was no more Catholic school or athletics. It was just sex, drugs, and rock and roll for my next 3 years of high school. And sex freaked me out. I was very fortunate with that. And then I joined the army. I enlisted in the army at 16 and joined the paratroopers, the infantry, the famous 82nd Airborne Division. And I barely got my honorable discharge by the plaque of my teeth because of alcoholism and addiction. I became a punk rocker, which is the wrong place to become a punk rocker, with its anti-authoritarian ethos. But I was a good soldier in the field, but in garrison, I left a lot to be desired, and I had a huge problem with authority and structure. And after I choked the sergeant, that was out of place, but you can't, you're not allowed to choke sergeants. Even the civilian world, they don't condone that, but in the military, that's a big no-no. So I was in big trouble. But I had a number of people testify on my behalf, and my battalion commander, who went on to become famous, he said that he saw that I had a lot of potential in these people who testified for me and my records, and that he would let me get my honorable discharge, so it didn't ruin my life if I got a bad conduct discharge. And and sometimes I think about his words that I have a lot of potential I need to fulfill, and it's I have a number of feelings about it, but I often have that memory. But these were foundational things of my life, and I had become agnostic, atheist. It seemed like the more screwed up shit I did, the more atheist I became. But when I was a young altar boy out at Our Lady of Guadalupe in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, I had aspirations to become a priest. I certainly did. I mean, I wasn't very serious about that. I thought about it a lot. I looked into it. I love theology. I started reading all of my own Greek mythology as a young child. I just really delved into it. Um, and indeed, later on when I became a scuba diver, and I scuba dived in central Mexico. I visited Tulum, which is a Mayan ruin, the only one on the sea. All the rest are inland. And I collapsed. I near fainted. I didn't lose consciousness, but I couldn't stand up, and I saw everything as it was. And it occurred to me. And then previously I'd been to ancient Rome, and when I returned, I redecorated my entire living room, ancient Rome, right? I mean, everything was cheap replicas except for one coin, which was 1,800 years old. But it occurred to me subsequently that uh, I started to adopt reincarnation because it made more sense to me than heaven, right? An afterlife in heaven, because the world is filled with such tragedy, such suffering and tragedy, especially for young people, little kids, babies, even. I mean, how do these guys get so cheated of happiness or having a life uh, of some redemption? The only thing that made sense to me for an answer to those questions is that reincarnation. They'd be able to come back and get that in another life. And so it occurred to me subsequently to these events I mentioned is that I was 2,500 years ago I was a Greek, right? Greek mythology interest. 2,000 years ago I was a Roman, that Roman interest, right? 1,500 years ago I was a Mayan. And a thought occurred to me, it blazed in my head that there was something in the jungle in central Mexico that I have to go find. I don't even know what it is. I haven't thought about it in a while, but it's something down there I got to find. But reincarnation made sense to me. But I was never, I mean, despite agnosticism and sometimes atheism, couldn't totally let go of my Christianity. And but I became very interested in and committed to personal development, over the years is, and I remember reading the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, which blew me away. It took me like 6 months to read it. I was committed to reading it, but it was just blowing me away. I couldn't only read a little at a time. And in the book, Walsh, the author, purports to have conversations with God, which I don't doubt. I totally recommend that book. But what I believe now was, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but what I believe now is that God, that Jesus was the most self-realized man ever, but the Son of God, and that's a long stretch. It's, all these religions, and one of the reasons why I rejected Christianity is that every religion thinks they're the right one and they got the right God. Everyone. What a what a coincidence, right? Right? Who's the right one, right? Oh yeah, mine. So that was one of the reasons why I rejected my religion, Christianity, because it was just as self-righteous as every other. That self-righteousness is a human universal dilemma. Uh, and so I had to deal with that, and that the supernatural part of it. The only one religion, Christianity, has got the God, the living God, the Son of God. All the rest are just prophets and philosophies, which are wonderful. And I love. I mean, I'm something of an amateur theologian. I'm so interested in religion and theology and spirituality. But what's going on now, and why I've created this channel in the last year or so, I'm being called back to Christianity, and this got I think about it a lot, and I watch a lot of videos and read about it, and I'm going back to church, which I've been really absent from for years. And it's it's quite fascinating. So what I believe now is that Jesus was the best, but God, well, that's quite a claim, right? Um, but it's a dilemma. So you can't be a real Christian if you don't believe Jesus is God. That's the major thing. So I have a dilemma, and so a big problem that I have is that I have this partial development of being an rounded person. Now, I was a life coach, and I know about this personal development. Life coaches, well, we often, to have a balanced life, you want to work on these different areas of your life, or if you can say that life is comprised of different parts, and there's different ways to divide it, whether it be spiritual, professional, educational, recreational, financial. You can divide it 6 ways, 8 ways, 10 ways, 15 different ways. Social, relationship, and certainly spiritual is one of those areas and that's always in there. That's always, no matter what spectrum you use, spiritual is always one of them. Um, and I have found myself to be spiritually kind of dead lately, and really indolent. There hasn't been any spiritual growth, and the that's really affected me as a person. And so that's something I've becomes the time has come for me to do something about it. And you can only put something off for so long. I mean, you can put it up for a little longer, but it's just living with like an abscess. It's like this constant pus. And you can resign yourself to it, or you can do something about it, clean the wound. You know, and I'm a practitioner of NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which is this awesome form of psychology about how we think. But you know what? It's most useful when you use it on somebody else. Using it on yourself can be effective, but it's harder. And you can use logical levels. That's part of NLP, where there's different uh, parts of behavioral change. And at the top is identity and spirituality. Well, who am I spiritually or religiously? Um, but I have Jesus Christ prompting me to get things done. Yeah, because things aren't getting done, and it does seem like Jesus Christ is my life coach. Well, maybe you might look at him that way, but I'm being called by and to Jesus, so that's who I am right now. Okay, so there you go. Please subscribe, like this video if it's of any. If you do like it, please subscribe to this YouTube channel because there's going to be all sorts of videos. I'm going to be asking very uncomfortable questions that typically people avoid about growth and intimacy and vulnerability and about God and religion. So please join me in this. And if you know of anyone that this might be of interest to, please share it with them. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.